Welcome, everyone. This is Michael Danklos of Elevate Your Best, and this is the Elevate Your Best podcast, where today we're going to be talking about accountability.
This is Bruno Martins from the Cyber Journey. I'm excited, Michael, to talk about accountability today. We've been through preparation, we've been through commitment, and those things are all related, right? You have to commit in order to be able to have accountability. Where do you wish to start? Do you wish to start talking about accountability, what it is, or can we just jump into this relationship between accountability and commitment?
I feel that we really can't talk about one without the other. It's in some ways, we seem to be coming back to this, is if I assume that you're going to be doing something is very different than you committing to it. I can't hold you accountable or even myself accountable to something that I assume is going to be happening. So that's kind of one of the key things that I want to make sure that we focus on is if I think you're going to be somewhere at a particular time, I can't be upset that you're not there at that particular time unless you said you're going to be there at that time.
So accountability has a lot to do with setting expectations then.
Well, it is generally the response to an expectation. So if I've said that I'm going to do this at this time, then that is an opportunity then for you to hold me accountable and for me to hold myself accountable to follow through on that particular action, that choice by doing that. And accountability is, to me, especially in my coaching practice, is not about judgment. It's about, did you do this or not? And if you
Mhm.
if you did it, what did you gain from it? If you didn't do it, then why not? It's not about being bad or wrong. It's just, it is checking in to see what happened to that. Because a lot of this really kind of comes down to is our word is very important. What we state we're going to do is very important. It actually reinforces the beliefs about ourselves. It actually is kind of the integrity you talk about, where your thoughts, your words, and your action are in alignment. So the accountability is then kind of the follow-up on that chain of events is, are your thoughts, your words, and your action in alignment? And that's where we build trust in relationships. That's where we actually build authority in that we actually are going to be following through on something. So the accountability is very much about the follow-up, the follow through. Are you completing that which you stated that you're going to do? For many of us, I know for me, it's easy for me to start something. And why accountability became so important is that I also want to complete them. And setting that as by a particular time is what a lot of the coaching is about. When we make commitments to ourselves, many people, it's tougher for us to make that commitment to ourselves because it's easy for us to let ourselves slide by. It's easy for us to not hold ourselves accountable. But if I make it a commitment to you, or a commitment to my partner, or to a team of mine, or a coworker, or my boss, they can then hold me accountable to what I stated.
So it's much like a culture where you just keep people, actually, the best word to use is accountable. And people just understand that this is expected for them, that they have standards. Like, I think that that's the word I was looking for. So having accountability in your life might actually relate a lot with deciding and maintaining a certain standard in your life. Do you agree with that, Michael?
So I very much feel that standards are part of it. Absolutely. Accountability, commitment, all of these do talk about what standard are you going to hold for your life? How are you going to consistently show up? Are you going to grow? Whatever your standards are for your life. To me, anytime that I'm in interaction with another person, I'm on a team with them at that point. If we are actually two people coming together to create a common goal, to get to a common goal, that's whenever I feel I need to then set those standards of, this is the way that we're going to play. Then once we know what those standards are, it's a matter of maintaining those. And there is some accountability around that as well. If I say that I'm going to do this every time, is I'm not going to yell and scream at you, and I start yelling and screaming, you have the opportunity to say, you committed to this. You said this is the standard, no yelling and screaming during our meetings. Or if it is, I'm going to let you finish your thought before I interrupt you. If that is a standard that we set, then you can hold me accountable to that. You said that this was important to you, not to interrupt. So that's where a lot of this does play out. So standards do play a huge role in that for sure. It needs to be in a relationship where there's trust there, that I trust you to hold me accountable and you trust me to hold you accountable as well. I'm not going to have the same relationship of somebody that I walk into at a store unless I know what the standards of that store is. If I just pick up the phone, that person doesn't know me from anyone unless we have a relationship already. But for me, I'm not, I don't have a commitment to that person yet. There's nothing they're going to hold me accountable to yet, because we haven't built that trust yet. We haven't built that relationship yet. The key point here is that we're building on a foundation of trust. If I'm working with a client, it's there, they are going to then know that I'm going to hold them accountable to what they say that they're going to do, and help them through any barriers that came up around that commitment and why they didn't follow through on it, or the lessons that they learned as they did. Maybe both. We learn from all of our interaction. And a coaching relationship to me is really about someone who can take a step back and look at the bigger picture rather than being up and in it, because it's really difficult to see our barriers, to see our blind spots when we're right up and in the middle of it. Where a coach does not have as much of an emotional attachment to those, so you can take that step back and look at the broader view.
There is a great deal of communication into this accountability thing. And I, for my experience, know that many people, they don't know how to communicate. I pass great deal of my life. I've been through great deal of my life where I just didn't knew how to communicate, didn't knew how to send a message, how to receive a message. There was a lot of screaming and arguing during that time. How do you advise people on to deal with this communication? Or maybe a better question to build on this would be, if the person doesn't have a good communication, if people around their lives, the closest people on their lives, are like this, they don't know how to communicate, they scream, they argue, they disagree. Do you have any advice to those people? Like, how do they start talking in order to achieve accountability with the people around them? Or is this something that needs to be fixed before you even think about accountability?
So I think it is a self-reinforcing process. So if there is this constant de-evolution of a conversation into yelling and screaming, it's a matter of coming back to that person at another time and say, I notice all the time we actually end up yelling in our conversations, and that's not the person I want to be. Can you help me in this commitment of having that we communicate on a respectful level and get their buy-in for that? And it's a matter of, in some ways, enrolling them into that idea of, we can actually exchange ideas a lot easier whenever I'm calm, whenever I'm present in the moment, versus being defensive. So then you are getting a commitment from the other person that they're not going to act in that way. And you're also committing yourself to act in that particular way as well. And then you've just created an accountability relationship. You've now actually set the foundation to move forward with that. That doesn't mean that it's never going to devolve into that again later. But now you have agreed, you've made a commitment that this is how you want to be. And it's an opportunity then to say, remember, we agreed, we committed to actually doing this respectful. Let's go and calm down and come back to this when we can both do that. So then we can actually make better progress in our relationship, or on this goal, or on this project. But it requires to have that courage to say, this is not working for me the way that this is happening.
It's very important. Since we spoke about setting up a standard, and you set up a standard for yourself, you decide what you want to live. One great deal of this process that many people leave to decide is, what don't I want to live? What don't I want to be? What don't I want to experience in life? This is very important, because you need to know where you don't want to go. You need to know where you don't want to lose your energy. You need to know where you don't want to be involved with, like the type of energy that you wish to involve with. I had an experience with an ex-girlfriend of mine where I saw some posting of her. I commented, and we talk very well. We have a great relationship still. And she said something to me like, I lost the patience. I screamed with the people. She was in a pool, and I went home. And I was like, that's so weird from you. It's just like, no, I lose my temper all the time. And I was like, that's not true. We spent 2 years together. You did never lose your head a single time. And she's like, it's because every time I was going to lose my head, you said something that calmed me down. And the reason why I'm telling this story is that Human beings, they are infectious. And the strongest one, the strongest frequency, it will infect the other. If you have a person that is screaming and it's upset and it's like, it doesn't matter how out of control that person is, and you are here stable, and this person is all over the place and you are here stable, it will get to a time where inevitably one will contaminate the other, one will infect the other. So either the stable one will be, okay, I'm going to scream too, or the screaming one will be like, there's no point screaming with you, and it's going off. Try to have your center if you get involved into some accountability. It might not be screams, but if somebody say that if you are trying to start establishing accountability with people, and sometimes you say something and the person gets defensive, right, Michael? Sometimes I get defensive. I'm very defensive person. Then Michael just knows me and he's like, hey, Bruno, have you noticed that when I touched this point, you became a little bit defensive? And he tries to make me see how I am behaving, because this is a matter of allowing the person to see how they are behaving. Many times we behave poorly, and as we are not very mindful, we don't see that. But another thing that I would like to leave here as well is that I happen to have found a tool for when people are disagreeing with you, which is very nice. So there are some steps you can take. This fits into any situations. It might be in a meeting where a person keeps getting up late. You talk to him, and Michael even hinted, I'm pretty sure you know about that, Michael. Let's say that an employee keeps coming late to the meetings, and you need to have this accountability of him to be there on time. And you can be like, hey, Bruno, for example, hey, Bruno, everybody gets here, like everybody is accountable, everybody is making an effort to get here on time. We understand that you have like your problem, like this, and that happened. This first step is understanding, recognizing the person, where the person comes from. Oh, I run late because my car made a problem and things like that. You say, okay, I understand. We all understand that your car had a problem. You had a problem with your car or traffic, or you were involved into a task. But the second step is, how do you make us feel when you act like that? But every time you get late, we are all here already ready. We might have started already the meeting, and then we have to come back and give you some information that you are missing. So we all have to hear that back again. And then you put some consequence. It might be some consequence, or first, I believe you kind of suggest a change. The third step's like, so we would expect of you, since everybody here is accountable to being on time here, we would expect of you to be here on time. And now you may put a consequence. You don't need to, but you may put. Otherwise, next time you get like 5-10 minutes late, next time you get 1 minute late, you are not 5 minutes here before the meeting ready, we will just keep you out of the meeting. So we don't have to restart, and we'll see what we can do without you. We know that you have this problem, but it's just like we really wish you to be accountable to being here on time, and you set up your expectations. Have you known this process, Michael? Those 4 steps?
So I've gone through a similar process in a couple of different arenas, and it is, it's very necessary to recognize where somebody is, let them know the impact that they're making, and then, how do we want it to happen in the future? For sure, those are all important, and potentially a consequence if it actually occurs multiple times. It's certainly a way to diffuse that. In the middle of that, though, it's a matter of asking then for the person that is acting outside the standards to recommit to how they want to show up, and have them make that choice of, yes, I'm committing to do this because it's the standard, or they have an opportunity to walk away. Not always do we have that opportunity in a business situation, or in a team you're on, or a relationship you're in, or a family member. I know that we kind of talked about, the peers that you're surrounding yourself with is a huge aspect of this. I want to be around people who are accountable, who are actually willing to be held accountable and hold themselves accountable. So that's the kind of people I want to work with, the people I want to be in a relationship with, the people that I'm actually going to, serve as clients of mine. And it's a matter of then, in the midst of that, the other person has to be willing to commit to that so you can hold them accountable to it in the future. Otherwise, it's actually just a waste of time for both of you. If you're constantly complaining about how somebody is acting, but they don't know what the problem is in a different way of doing it, you're missing an opportunity for them to learn a lesson by the impact of what they're making. That is one of the core components of accountability. Not that there's any emotion tied to it, though, this is the impact of what you're doing. As you stated, is if someone's showing up late to a meeting where there's 4 or 5 people there, if we have to go back and repeat the meeting, if we're having a 15-minute meeting and you show up 10 minutes late, you've now missed 10 minutes that we have to repeat for you. It now turns into a 25-minute meeting, and you're then wasting
Yes.
people's time. And it's a matter of then saying, this is the construct of the way that we're working. This is how we need you to be. Or do you have a better solution for what's coming on? And engaging them in a way to recommit in a way that supports everybody in the process. Then it's still then the follow-up of accountability of, you said you're going to act in this way. Are you actually acting this way? And how do we get you closer to that? What steps do all of us need to make, us and you, in order to accomplish that?
When you were speaking, you said like, does this person wants to do this? What that led me to think is he part of our group? Is he one of us? Is not he actually, is this person part of a group? Is this person one of us? Is this person someone that wishes to operate into the same standard that we define? Like the standard, I believe the standard and the expectations, they are very related to the commitment side of things, right, Michael?
Yes, absolutely. And I do want to make a discerning thing between a standard and an expectation, because there is a difference. To me, a standard is something that everybody's agreed upon. For me, an expectation is something that has been projected onto another person. When you're building a team, when you're building a group, when you're building a community, you will generally find, and not necessarily does everybody agree with or read through them, is knowing what the standards, what the terms of service are. What are the standards we expect in this group of people? How are we going to show up? And that actually having the courage to call someone out when they're not playing by the rules is as important as agreeing to play by the rules. If these are rules, standards, commitments, whatever those are, having the trust that someone's going to call you out on them, for me, is important for that group to grow. That's the type of community I want to be around, because if I am let slide on everything, that's not me elevating my best. If I'm constantly sliding down, that's where that knowing what the standards are and agreeing to them in whatever team that looks like is the first half. That's the commitment half. But then being held accountable to them is the second half, knowing that the consequence of not fulfilling that commitment has a ripple effect. There's always a consequence for the choices we make, good, bad, or indifferent. You are actually choosing this path versus that path, which means you know what's on this path. You won't know what's on this path, and you have to be okay with that. There's the accountability comes in. This is the positive consequence that you've actually created by fulfilling this, because accountability isn't just about you did this wrong. It's also where we're going to be going to next, celebrating the fact that that commitment was fulfilled, acknowledging someone that they did overcome that barrier. So it is really a spectrum that we're talking about here. The accountability is key to call someone out and acknowledge them when they're doing amazing things, celebrating their wins.
That relates as well with the peer side of things, participating in a group. Because I think that this thing about community, because this is about community, it is currently overlooked into our society. If we just have, we are talking about accountability and how it is important. And I noticed that the conversations mainly on corporations, companies, like how to keep employees accountable, and this and that, how to hold your team accountable, how to teach your team member accountability. And this makes me realize how we are fragmented as a community in society. I understand that companies are great ways for you to get this together. Like, of course, they are a small community, but we need to seek in our lives other communities other than work. We just have so much focus on our career. I do practice jiu-jitsu, which is a great community to participate in. I have other small communities like I am in Mind Valley, where I met Michael. This is a great community. And why am I speaking this? Because if you get into a group, this group will have standards, even if it's not conscious. This group will have expectations, even if it's not said. And you will be accountable, even if you don't know exactly what for. So the idea is that those things, they are like rules that are operating around us, and we need to just be mindful to use them in our favors. Because even if our community doesn't have the standards that we are clearly aware of and expectations, we need to start understanding how those things work, talking about them, establishing them, because expectations, for example, they are something that needs to be talked about. Standards, they are something that need to be talked about. If we find communities that are on purpose, we will fix so much of those things, so many of those aspects in our lives. Don't you agree, Michael?
So I very much feel that the teams that we're on, being mindful of what the standards are on that team, so you know what you're signing on to, is very important when it comes to the accountability side of things. And it also, like I mentioned before, it is a matter of those peers in that community is keeping those standards up and available so that people know what those are. The ignorance of the standards shouldn't be an option, in my opinion. It's something that when I was on a men's team, this is something that we talked about regularly. This is the standards by which this team plays, and maybe even revisiting what those are and whether everybody recommits to them. Maybe removing some, maybe redefining what those really mean and understanding them. So it is part of the conversation. If that's in, what we were doing was really about accountability as a men's team. But the same thing is true in your business, in your personal relationships as well. Like I said, if I'm actually surrounded with people that the only way that they communicate is through text, I need to know that that's the way of communication. If I call someone and that, there's a standard of we're going to return a phone call within a certain period of time, I need to know what that standard is so I can then maintain that with that team, that group, that organization, that community, and knowing what those are. So we're just playing the game in some ways. It's actually about where you committed and will you be held accountable. Another aspect of this too is the humility of owning when we haven't fulfilled the commitment. Because once again, there is a consequence for all the choices we make. Many times we don't know what the consequences are. But if you don't own the fact that you did it or that you didn't do it, that's a core aspect of the accountability as well. Is that we're kind of reporting back to someone on your progress. If I've got a project that I'm on, I need to actually check in on how am I making it along that path. And owning is I'm behind here or I'm way ahead of schedule is also part of that accountability, because it's accountability isn't just at the finish line of whether you finished or not. You have 2 hours to get to the finish line. It's also accountability along the process, because to me our life isn't just on my deathbed is when I'm going to be held accountable. It's also all the steps along the way. And really kind of even in the life book process, it's about looking at that, where do you want your life to be, and then breaking it down into the smaller pieces so your progress towards it. That's the accountability aspect as well. If I make small commitments, so me personally, I actually set up 2, 3, sometimes 5 commitments that I'm going to do for the duration of that day that are in alignment with what I actually have set out for the duration of the week, which those are then based on the month, the quarter, the year. Yes, we could, there are certainly aspects of my life where I'm just living with the flow of things. But I feel that I'm going to know the progress I'm going to make in my life if I know what my destination is and the steps that I'm going to take in order to get there, and celebrating at each and every one of those phases as I'm getting closer to this bigger goal of living this fantastic life that I want to live. But it requires that progressive accountability along the way. That's when you get that dopamine hit of the likes or the crossing the item off of your to-do list. And it's that feedback loop is important for the longer term goals that you're going to make, is that little progress along the way. And accountability is key for that.
I love when you say like not knowing the standard is not an option. That's really good.
It's important because of the people who are on the team reminding each other what the standards are. I know that when most people install software on their computer and they download an app, they just scroll through the terms of service and say, yeah, whatever, because it's too complicated for us to read that whole thing. Many times I will actually scroll through that just to see what's there. I'm one of those kind of nerdy people. But your standards in your community should be something simple, direct, that you know what you're going to be held accountable to. Otherwise, why you're in that community in the first place?
This idea leads me to think, Michael, in the following. Looks like because I am a person that is trying to do all those things, and am trying to do all those things for like 8 years or something like that. So I did a lot of experimentation and try to implement things in my life that were not like very right out of the way. And in an environment here in Brazil where people are not concerned very much with those things. So, what I have experienced in my life was that when you try to do that, but I believe just by in advance, this was my mistake. And it was because those people didn't decide to be accountable for those things that I'm talking about. But when I tried to keep people accountable, I was like a guy that was, I don't know the word, but I was upsetting people. I was like wrong. What is the word for that? Like the nuisance guy.
Hmm. So I've seen this in several different communities where you've got the person who's like the warden, they're the sheriff in town of the way that everybody should act. And that's I've never found that to work. And that's the difference, in my opinion, between an expectation and a commitment, or and to a set of standards. If I expect you to act in a particular way, but you've never agreed to act that way, that just makes me the jerk in the situation, not them.
A jerk. That's the word.
So,
So yeah, Michael, when we do behave like that, we are actually acting like a jerk. You don't need to act like a jerk in order to have people accountable. Remember, you need to find your group. Perhaps your family is not your group. Perhaps your friends that are immediately around you and the people that you got engaged with in your life, they are not your group. They are not your peers. I love this word, peers. I don't know if this is actually the meaning in English, but for me, peers are like the people that are walking beside you, the people that are like equal to you, the people that are on your standard. Pay attention to the words that we are using. We speak about standard. So if you are not maintaining, if you don't have the wish to maintain the same standards as other people in your group do, they are not your peers. Doesn't mean that you don't have peers around you. Doesn't mean that you are out in the world alone. It means that you need to find those people. And today, thanks to technology and all the things, we can find those things. Me, in my experience, I always felt misplaced. I always didn't connect very much with people. And when I get to a round of people talking together and I start talking, sometimes they get upset because I'm talking about business. I'm talking about, have you done these things that you say that you wanted to do? I'm talking about the future. And many of the people around me, they feel very anxious about the future. Even I sometimes feel very anxious about the future, and they just want to like enjoy now and have some little fun now. I felt very bad by those people not being my peers and not finding them, but I found out that those people that are my peers, they are in my case away from me. They are in the USA, they might be in Portugal, they might be into the Czech Republic or into Australia. I have found people all over the world with whom I connect with. And by finding these people, a magic happens. They have the same standards or similar standards. They are willing to be accountable for me and by me. and they have search tools like those ones that I search on how to disagree with somebody. You see, the people that are your peers, they are in the same similar journey. Michael has the journey with the men's group. Those people, they have similar standards, similar expectations, and because they are together, and because those people each put on the effort to find this group, and the group is a main thing, like a community. If you can join a community, if you find a community of people that are like-minded, it is priceless, because this will trigger, like Michael said, like a trigger that will cause a ripple effect in all areas of your life.
Yeah, and it has very much made a huge impact for me with the teams that I've been working on. And if anybody heard you call that team a group, you would be doing push-ups, just so you know, because there's a different context around a team versus a group. So
Sure.
the common example is if you're going to have people playing basketball and you have a pickup group that actually goes and plays basketball, you can have a lot of really good players, but do they work as a team? So that's really where I'm actually looking, is setting up the different teams that I'm on, the people who agree to play by the same standards, agree to actually have the same presentation, so that you do consider each other peers, versus a group is a little bit more loosely related. It is really kind of being very specific about the words you use about how those people come together. If I'm actually, on a sports team, people who practice together play the game together. And that's really what my team is about, that I have surrounded myself with. Bruno being one of those members of that team, as well as Jim and my partner Jenny and the other people that I work with, are all important aspects of my life. And each of those teams that I've built has different standards by which we actually play by. They're all pretty similar, but they know how I show up and they know how they're going to show up, and we actually then play on that level that we've agreed to. But if someone new comes in and becomes a part of this, I'm not going to hold them to the same standards if they don't know what they are. So that's why it's constantly, why I said it's not an option, is it's up to me. It's my drive is to let people know that whenever we're playing together, these are the standards we're going to play by. It's not as much because the other person is ignorant. It's because it's my responsibility, and I need to own the fact that this is the standards I play by. If you're willing to play that game with those standards, then let's move forward. Otherwise, it's a no for right now, which really kind of plays into the ideas of what boundaries you hold to.
Just coming back a little bit about the expectations, I wanted to say something as well. I have a conversation yesterday with a friend of ours from Mind Valley, and we talk about this idea of expectation. And I just remember now, because the expectation is something that you have. And if you place those expectations to other people, you will bring up suffering, because you cannot take ownership about what people decide to do. You need to take ownership about what you can decide to do and what you can do. It's like it's ownership. It's an extreme value, like something very valuable that people need to nurture. Ownership. It's like taking on the responsibility. Even the last podcast, when we spoke about relationship, I spoke about the importance of ownership. Like, it's not something bad, it's not a possession. It's more like you feel like that is you. Because that is you, you take care of it. So these are the things that you identify as yourself. What is me? What is myself? So those values, they are myself. So I'm accountable to nurture, to maintain those values. And I have expectations to people. My expectation need to be what I can ask. What can I ask? Because asking is a power. What can I ask? I can ask you if you identify with these values. I can ask you if you wish to nurture them in yourself. I can ask you if you're willing to take on the action that is necessary to be part of our team, not group, but team. I like that, Michael, because that expresses better the idea. You can ask the person, are you willing to put on the effort that is necessary to be part of our team, because it's necessary? The expectations are what you can ask, not what people can deliver. But standards, like you say, Michael, standards, it's like the minimum that is expected. You need to deliver
So, Bruno, one thing I want to kind of come back to is as we're talking about this idea of standards, it's actually super important to me because, as an example, the name of my company of Elevate Your Best was one of the standards on my men's team. And it's really important because it's, there's this idea of giving your best, of showing your best, of bringing your best, which I agree is that I'm going to do the best I can in every moment. But to me, the idea and why the title of my company is Elevate Your Best is each time I show up for the game, I'm going to bring my best. But between games, I'm practicing, learning, and getting better. So the next time I go up against that same challenge, I crush it. I go beyond where I did last time. That's the goal, is to be prepared in between times that I need to show up so I can elevate that best. It's going to be different every single time I show up, better or worse depending on the practice I do in between. So that's why the name of my coaching company is what it is.
It's interesting. I heard Usain Bolt speaking at some video this week. He was speaking about that, the preparation, how hard it is, how people don't realize how hard it is. Actually, I heard somewhere in the past someone saying that your success is built on the time that nobody's looking, behind the scenes, when nobody's watching. It is a very good standard for you to have, because can you keep yourself accountable? Because one of the things that I heard that really made a difference for me, Michael, it played a shift, is that be your best mentor. The only person that matters, like you might be hearing from Michael, you might be hearing from Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, like all these powerful people that have things to deliver to you. But if you are not keeping yourself accountable on taking on the action, on following up with what is needed, you will not see progress.
Absolutely. It's kind of what we came, we talked about a little bit in commitment as well, is your word is the only thing that no one can take away from you. It is building your integrity, your accountability to yourself. There's a poem out there that talks about the man in the mirror. It's that person who's going to be with you for your whole life is yourself. And oddly enough, we fulfill and follow through on our commitments when they're made more to other people than to ourselves, because we for whatever reason value that connection more. But coming back to, are you actually following through because of your own integrity, your own honor, your own self-respect, your self-love, your self-awareness? All of those pieces are key, in my opinion, to our personal growth. To be self-actualized is by consistently delivering on what you say you're going to do. So the man in the mirror is the person that we are the most accountable to. It's who we actually wake up to every morning. It's who we go to bed with every night. And if we can't hold that accountable, that's where our sense of honor, integrity, self-respect, self-awareness comes from, is, are we following through on the things that we believe we are? That accountability really is holding up that which we think we are versus that which we say we are. Are those in alignment? The definition of integrity that I've heard the most often is, do your thoughts and your words and your actions line up? That is the stream of accountability.
Do your thoughts and your words and your actions line up? You see this as the stream of accountability.
Absolutely. It's that self accountability, that integrity is really the total accountability of, are those in alignment? And I know that I've been in a place where they weren't. I've been in a place where I had 2 out of 3. Or, even as a coach, it's been a struggle because I know the things I've learned and the things that I say and the things that I do, but is that in alignment with who I believe I am? And unfortunately, when any of those are out of whack, whenever they're out of alignment, is when, for me, I go off track. It's when I find myself making more mistakes than having successes. Making sure that each of those, no matter what they are, there's no judgment from me on if you believe you're this or that. It's more a matter of, do those 3 things line up? If my identity inside my head, my thoughts is that I'm always a jerk and then I say that I'm a nice person, those aren't in alignment. If I own that I'm a jerk and I get results and I think I'm a jerk, is that in alignment with all of it? Are you being held accountable for thinking and saying and doing being a jerk? Great, at least you know it. And that then will repel people who don't want to deal with somebody who's a jerk. But if I do want to say that I'm out here to serve other people, which I do, and I say, and I know, I think I want to be of service, and I show up as that, and I take actions to be of service to people, recording this podcast, being on the summit, the coaching clients I'm working with, the programming clients I'm working with, I'm here to be of service. Those are in the line, in alignment, in integrity, and I have people around me who know whenever I'm off track that hold me accountable whenever 2 out of the 3 are not there. That's my team. That's my community.
This steps into that thing about the ripple effect. If you that are hearing us right now, notice Michael spoke about identity, which leads us to the law of resonance we spoke into the last episode. If you haven't seen the last episode, please just find it in our channel. It will be there. And we spoke a little bit about the law of resonance, which is like, I only attract that which I identify with. That's what people try to say when they say like, oh, you can only see in others what you have in yourself. That is a point of truth there, because we can only see in others what we have experienced ourselves. Doesn't need actually to be ourselves, but if we got like somebody close to us that behave like that, we identify that because we know that we have something like some register here about it. But the best way for you to attract whatever you want is to identify with that and be aware of it, because you might think like a jerk, you might act like say things like a jerk and act like a jerk, and you are not realizing it. Be mindful. That thing again, see yourself, be able to watch yourself. This is a major thing in life. Many people are living through life and they are so stuck in here that they don't do that which Michael say, which is important for the coach, and it is important for everybody, for you to get out of here for a while and go back, place yourself as like an spectator and see yourself, watch yourself, because now you will realize that you are acting like a jerk, you are thinking like a jerk, and things like that. This is just an example. I know it might be, there's many other examples we could use, but this is important. And there are many people that they don't know what they should be accountable for. Like they are acting poorly, and people, other people in their lives, you might have someone acting poorly in your life, and then you fail to express your standards and your expectation, which is what we spoke before, and that person keeps disappointing you. Like I had a serious conversation with my father one of these days. I'm always open, and he tries to reach out, and I'm like, okay, let's talk. And then he was complaining about my sister not wanting to talk to him. So I spent an entire day talking to my sister, a whole therapy session. And she said, okay, I'm going to talk to him. And he was like, and she talked to him. And then he ignored her. And then he was trying to reach me out. And I was like, I don't want to talk to him. And then one day I say, okay, I'm going to call my father. Just say, I'm going to call my father now. And then I called him, and he was all like all words about me not answering him. And I was like, I didn't answer because I didn't want to talk to you. And the reason why I didn't want to talk to you is because you asked me to, there is a reason. It's not random. It is a reason. It's something that you did, I told him, because you asked me to talk with my sister about you. And I did. And I explained for him the whole thing. And then you went there and you disappointed her again. I will not be opening doors for you, so you are disappointing people in our family. He needed to know that, because if I didn't express that to him, he would not know what the standard is. And it was a long conversation, but I said to say to him the standard. I say to him my expectations, because when you say those things, the person is accountable. If they don't want to be part of your group, which is in this case my family, the people that I really consider my family that support me and all, it's his decision.
And that's sounds like it was not an easy conversation to have. And those tough conversations, so many people tend to avoid because it is uncomfortable. You are potentially risking a relationship because you're holding a standard at a particular level. I feel that's one reason why Suzanne and I actually do the summits that we do, because we want to have those tougher conversations, those deeper conversations of setting, this is where I'm at. Because I think that that's the grit that we need in order for us to move forward in our lives, to be willing to have those tougher conversations that may end up upsetting someone.
And it's interesting that you say, like, be able to risk losing relationships, because this was part of the conversation. This is very personal, but I'm okay to sharing that with you guys. But the idea was that there was a point in this conversation where we came back and forth, and I say, okay, here's the thing. This relationship that you believe you have with me and my sister, where you didn't do this and that, because the truth is my father abandoned us when I was in the belly of my mother. But he was saying that he didn't, but he did. I say to him, this idea of relationship that you have in your head, where you didn't abandon us, where everything's okay, and when you show up, we need to receive you with open arms and like a whole feelings of joy. This is not a relationship that I want. I don't want this relationship. I don't want this relationship with you. I know you are my father, but I don't want this. I want a relationship where you are present, where you care, where you are not like creating troubles and not disappointing us. I want another relationship. I want to have a father in my life, present in my life. I want to, but not this way that you believe you are doing everything right and we should like rejoice that you are here when you show up, but in this way where you actually are present more than just when it's convenient for you. I don't know if you agree with that, Michael, because what I want to say is that there are relationships that we attached ourselves to and we don't want to lose, but indeed those relationships are just not beneficial to us. They are actually being detrimental to us. Do you agree with that, or do we need to take care to all our relationships no matter what?
So I personally feel that there are relationships that are toxic for us, and that so many times, for whatever reasons, we want to hang on to those because of nostalgia, because we, they deserve to have us there, but for whatever reasons. I've been in several of those relationships where it went on for far too long and did not serve either of us, where both of us were actually in a worse state because we worked together. I think it does require us, not so much that I need to say, I really don't like the ultimatum of you have to act this way, otherwise go away. But sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes it is required to say, if you want a relationship with me, this is how I'm going to show up, and I need you to meet me there. And it's a hard place to come from, because I don't want to tell anybody else how to act. But I can say is that if we're going to work together, this is how I'm going to show up, and this is where I
Mhm.
need you to be for us to be in this relationship. Otherwise, this isn't a relationship. And maybe it is toning down the interaction of that relationship and not totally wiping off the map. Maybe it is totally wiping that off the map and actually walking away completely from it, if it is too toxic that even that small interactions are actually detrimental to the health of yourself and the other person. Maybe it's only one-sided. Maybe they're getting, a lot out of it and you're only getting a small amount. And it's a matter of discerning and in determining whether the common phrase that I've heard in several different scenarios is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the action you're taking worth the outcome it's going to cause for both of you? There is times that I'm going to volunteer my time. There's going to be times that I know I'm going to be giving. There's other times that I'm going to be receiving. But it can't always be one way, that I'm giving to everyone and I'm not receiving back, because then my cup is empty. I have nothing left to give. It's the idea of when you fly on an airplane that put your mask on first and then help the person next to you. And some of the accountability is around that as well, is you're giving in all of these places. Are you actually able to fill your cup? Are you doing the self-care that's necessary? Are you working with people who do fill you up or is it all people who are taking from you? So I think that all of those are actually very much a balance, and sounds like there's some history here with your dad that is still getting cleaned up, and it's not an easy process. But
Yeah, there is a lot of cleaning up to do there. Don't worry about that.
mhm.
But what you were speaking, Michael, made me think one thing, because we are now focusing on kind of the bad side of the negative relationships, the toxic. But like Michael said, accountability is not just about, hey, you are not doing enough. There is another side that we might approach it. I hope we do have time. Indeed, there are some toxic relationships. And I want to call attention, because I noticed this in my personal life, how we become tolerant to people once we accepted them into the group. For you not to fall on this trap, have your standards and defend those standards. Because there is a blind spot that we have, like for family and close friends, those people that we already accepted in our group, where they start behaving poorly and we are like, oh, this is just that guy. Like, it's just him, you know? I had a friend that we accepted him in our group, and we actually did a lot of business together. And then I started noticing several behaviors, like he took something from somebody. And then one day he told me that he would create fake bills for his father to pay. And then he did some thing with another friend of ours. And we were just like, I was laughing. We were like, we were acting like he's silly, you know, like he does those things that nobody or no one of us do. And within time, I believe that Matheus did those things with everybody in the group. He actually stole me like some $700 or things like that. And after he did that, I realized, how could I? How could I, after I seen this happening with other people so many times? Because we find excuses to protect the people from our group. We find excuses to protect the group, the community. It comes again to the community, to the team. Why do we care so much, Michael said, when other people keep us accountable much more than when we do? Because we take care of the group. It is in our instinct. It is in our brain somewhere really deep there. We fear being excluded from the group. So we put the group over ourselves, and we actually achieve much more motivation, much more accountability, much more all of that. If we simply do that side of things that I told you, the group, the community, accountability. I even spoke to Michael this week. Accountability, I believe it's much about engagement with the group, engagement with the community.
But what it sounds like what happened with Matteo in this particular instance is he was already taking advantage of people outside and was, as they say, showing your cards about how you're going to act. And that was the opportunity to hold him accountable of that's messed up. How could you do that? And each time
Do that. True.
he kept doing things that was testing the waters to see how much he could get away with.
And some people, Michael, they actually test the waters and they are aware of that. This is something I noticed in this guy, is that he tested the waters and he knew when the waters were troubled. So he kept quiet. And then he would start hovering. He wouldn't engage, he would hover. And he would hover and see, is that okay for me to approach? And when he saw, okay, it's okay for me to approach, and then he would approach again. And then he would mess up. And we would not be conscious, because this is why I say be conscious, be mindful. Because now today I learned that. Now, when I encounter people that they manifest behaviors that I do not wish to engage with, like taking something that is from other people, I have a frank conversation with that person. And that happens, what happens is what you say, that usually the person denies it, and then they recognize, because I am like very like, okay, let's talk about this happened, don't try to deny it, it happened. And then the person might say, okay, I did that. There was a guy once time that he said, okay, I did that, and what about it? And I'm like, okay. So this guy now, it's just like, hi. When I see him, hi, you know? So that's it, because that's the relationship I realize I need to have with these people. I know you might not have many like toxic relationships. I'm just using examples in your life, your personal life. But if you do, it is good for you to know what are your standards, What do you wish to live with? Because human beings are infectious. They will infect you. My view on that, Michael, is a little harsher, maybe because of those experiences that I have in my life. But my view is, if you are experiencing toxic things, you need to trim them down. Like, hey, hi, hi. But let's talk about the good side of accountability, Michael. We need to keep people accountable, not to infect our lives in a detrimental way. But how does accountability relate with actually somebody that technically would not need accountability because he's all fired up, producing, beating up his quotas, and delivering more than what was expected?
So accountability there really comes more so around kind of going on to that next pillar of mine, which is celebrating with that person, acknowledging them how far they've come. It's not just about, finding the lack in someone. In fact, if you read through the book, The 1 Minute Manager, it's about setting a 1 minute goal. The second phase is a 1 minute acknowledgement. It's a 1 minute praising of catching somebody doing it right before you actually get to the level of a reprimand. So the accountability part is as much about catching people doing it right, starting off with small goals and working your way up to get momentum so that the person believes that they can actually take on a bigger project, a bigger goal. And that person who seems to be on fire, it's an opportunity then for them to expand and to elevate that best. What is your stretch goal? If you were to push that by 10% or 15%, 4%, whatever that is, are you able to deliver on that? And then support them to get there. So accountability is as much about acknowledgement of the delivery, positive, and making sure that they know that sometimes the acknowledgement is enough. Sometimes that acknowledgement is the words you say. If it's financial compensation, maybe it's actually a favor that you earned, that you give them and say, I'll follow up with you on doing this, is something that actually adds that a little bit more value for them actually following through on that. And I know Darcy is actually really good about that acknowledgement aspect. And sometimes, like I said, that's enough. Thank you very much for doing that, and the gratitude that goes around it. So
For those
it's
of you who don't know, Darcy is a friend of ours from the Mind Valley. She's actually a Mind Valley ambassador for the Mastering Authentic Networking quest. So a shout out to Darcy. You are amazing, Darcy. Thank you.
so the accountability is intending to not be emotionally charged. It's, did you do this? Yes or no? Awesome. You did that. What did you learn? You didn't do this. Okay. What got in the way? What actually held you back? What came up for you, and discerning what that is. And then helping that person then commit to what's next, recommit to what was missed. Now that you've taken the knowledge and the wisdom that you've gained by not achieving it, what do you need to do next in order to accomplish that? So it's important to be aware of that it's not just the bat that you hit somebody over the head with. It's also the cake you bring them, or the prize or the present, to say thank you very much for showing up and doing what you said you're going to do. And not in a pandering sort of way either. It's not a matter of like treating somebody as a child, but it's like, thank you, I'm grateful that you actually followed through on that, because this is the impact it's going to have on the next things that are coming up. And then how can we support you to what you're doing next?
Awesome. Awesome. I like this idea of small steps, Michael, because this is very important. When we do small steps, when we do little by little, we recognize Tony Robbins. I don't know if this is his quote, but he says something that is like, the human being overestimates what he can do in 3 to 5 months and underestimate what he can do in 3 to 5 years, because we want to achieve so much result into the short term that we lose track of what it matters, that is the long term. Like the long term is really, really what matters. Because if you put a little bit, Will Smith tells us a story of how his father made him and his brother build up a wall. Looks like his father put down a wall just for them to build it. There was some lesson there. So every time they got from school they could not get inside the house if they didn't prepare what was necessary to put at least one brick into the wall. And they need to go there and put some bricks into the wall, build a little bit, and then go inside. And he learned that a wall is built brick by brick. And you don't have to be rushed, and you don't have to be like putting bricks all crazy. Oh, I need to finish this wall. Just put that brick the best you can. There was a time, I believe, where his father was not satisfied with the wall and put down the wall. I believe that was that. And then he was like, okay, I need to put each brick like perfectly. There is the aspect of setting up the example as well. If you are like small goal, small goal, small goal, and you use that person as an example, I believe that this is a very important aspect to the group for the others to follow. The others will be more easy to follow if there is actually somebody setting up the example. And maybe you are the leader, maybe you are the first, but you need followers. Followers emulate new followers, not leaders. Leaders don't emulate followers. It's people following that bring more people to follow. And another thing that you touch, Michael, that I think it's very good, it's there is an aspect of controlling emotions there, right? Not being charged by not achieving or over or achieving, not being charged by those things, but like understanding that staying on your core, achieving or not achieving, right?
Right. And it's not so much about controlling your emotions, because I think emotions are going to be expressed whenever they are. If you end up repressing them, they're going to come out at a different time. It's more that coming into this type of relationship with someone is there isn't an emotional charge there. It's more looking at what the impact, what the consequence is going to be to people around you, rather than saying, I'm really sad and upset and disappointed because you didn't do the thing that you committed to do to move your life forward. That doesn't make sense, because as you said before, as expectations is for how I'm going to act. And if I project those onto you and you don't do how I think you should act, that's on me, not on them. It's the same thing is true for this accountability concept as well, is did you do what you said you're going to do? Do you know what the consequence of that is going to be? And
Uh-huh.
essentially making it a conversation rather than an argument. It's not about a debate. It really is. It's relatively straightforward. If you look at the 4 disciplines of executions and the cadence of accountability, it's a matter of, did you do the thing or did you not do the thing? And if you didn't do the thing, what are you going to do to make up for it this week? If you're looking at objectives and key results, it's these are the key results that you're looking to accomplish. And did you take the steps necessary in order for this key result to have been enacted by the deadline that you're going to do? And if not, what do you need to do to get back on track? It's not about it being tied up in the emotions. It's really a matter of looking at the momentum that you're taking and whether you're going to get to that result that you long term want to create.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you didn't do the thing that you were accountable to doing, this might be with yourself, this might be with a group, own that. Like, I didn't. And be okay with that. Because owning that is really important. Everything that you try to avoid, deny in your life, it is bad for you. There is a poem that says, Michael mentioned a poem, and we are all poetry today. But there is a poem that says like, this human being is a house of guests. I don't remember the author, I don't remember the name, but the message is this human being is a house of guests. They come and they go, and we need to receive them. The person's talking about emotions, because if sadness come and you try to keep it out of the door, it will bash into the door, it will put the door down, and it will enter, and it will stay longer. But if when it knocks, you just open the door and you receive it as a friend. Might be sadness, might be anger, might be anything. You receive it as a friend and you accept it. It doesn't tend to stay long. It just says what it has to say, and it goes away. And if you own your mistake and you accept it, you will learn it. Because one of the biggest aspects of accountability is actually keeping track of your mistake and not repeating them. If you go into a road and you learn a mistake and you need to go back all the way, bring the lesson with you so you don't have to go that way all over again.
The way
Right,
that
Michael?
The way that I've heard that expressed before is the first time is a mistake, the second time is a choice.
Actually, it is. It is a choice.
If you
Yeah.
know that if I, as an example, I know quite a few people who enjoy going out and drinking until they're drunk on the weekends. You are constantly making a choice to do that, knowing what the consequence the next day is. And then when you complain about the hangover on Sunday morning because you went out and got drunk on Saturday night, I don't want to hear the complaint that you're hungover. You chose to go out and get drunk on Saturday night. Now, if the choice also is that whenever I go and I start drinking, I always drink until I'm drunk, you're choosing to go to a place where you're going to get drunk. Now, the same thing can be true for the relationships that you show up with and how you show up in those relationships. Being drunk is one of those things that I think that many people can relate to. But if I'm going to
Mhm.
take these actions in a relationship and it always ends up with this result, and I keep going through those, making those same choices in the relationship of who I'm with, how I show up for them, and I keep getting the same result, you're choosing to take those steps in order to get to that result.
You are identifying yourself with that thing. Like, I am a person that drinks, and I am a person that drinks until it gets knocked down. Like Michael say, I am a person that always drink, and not him exactly in his example. I'm a person that always drink, and I drink until I'm knocked out. This is something that you identified with. It's not something that is happening to you. You identify with that, like, okay, I can be like this, I guess so. And now, when you go out, you already made a decision right down in the past. We spoke about that into preparation. The decisions that really matter, they are doing in the preparation. So somewhere you prepare that every time you go out, you get drunk until you are knocked down. So now, when you go out, you act upon this information. So be careful what you identify yourself with. Because if you identify yourself with other things, even if you don't believe that right now, you will see that things will change. That in which you identify will come to you, right?
Absolutely. And here's the thing too is we've talked a lot about the community and your identity and a couple of other different aspects of this. It's the phrase I've heard often is that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that comes back to what Bruno said a couple of times about personalities are contagious. The statement that I heard almost 20 years ago now is attitudes are contagious, is yours worth catching? Because
Awesome.
how you show up really is, you're going to have an impact. It is that butterfly effect. Is this choice here is going to have an impact here, 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 and here. It's going to have an impact on the long term. So where do you want to be? Then what steps you need to take in order to get there? And that's where accountability really kind of ties into this. Is where is it that you want to be? Your attitude is contagious. If you show up for work every day, you show up in your relationship every day, complaining about every aspect of what you're doing, are you going to get more things to complain about? Or are you going to get more things to be happy about? That you're going to have
Yeah.
joy about? And the accountability is those little things. Accountability isn't about the big, huge project. It's not about the next year of your life. It's not about the next 50 years of your life. It is that daily thing that you do, that one brick you put in the wall, that one step you take up the side of the mountain each time. That is the accountability we're talking about here. And oddly enough, when you start tracking those one little things, the calories you eat every day, how much exercise you do every day, the small strategies of reading a little, if you read for 5 minutes every day, by the end of the year, you've actually read what, 1,600 minutes? How many pages would you have read? How much knowledge would you have gained? Not an hour, but 5 minutes. You can do almost anything in 15 minutes a day over a period of time, no matter how big that project is. That's the accountability that I'm really looking at, is those small steps and having someone that can move to that next phase of celebration of your small wins. Because then when I look back on what I did in 2020, regardless of how much of a mess it was, I still accomplished a lot and shared that with people that then celebrated the wins with me because I actually had the accountability steps already lined up in the previous full year. of daily, weekly, monthly commitments. That's where a coach, accountability team, peers that you're actually working with who are on the same path as you are can help you accomplish those big things in your life.
So just to summarize a little bit, it's better for you to find out accountability with the group, with your peers, than just yourself. If it's just yourself, it's a little bit harder, not because it's not possible, but because we as human beings are wired that way. We value the group, we wish to maintain the group. So it's not about bashing up in people's head what they say they will do, right? It's about just taking a look at your results and seeing what you individually and you in your group are producing together. And it is also not about bashing to people's head what they should have done. It's more about just taking a look at the results that you individually and your group is producing together, and not be emotionally about it. Just follow up, see if you are producing is related to your vision, your purpose, because that's what many people forget. Do the long-term thinking, have the long-term vision, stack brick after a brick. Is there anything else, Michael, that we mentioned that is interesting to bring up now?
Well, the other part I think that is really important for a lot of this too is that it is certainly that accountability to yourself and others, but it's also owning your results. It's about owning the fact that the steps you took achieve this result. It may be the things that you're owning the last day or the last 5 years that have led you to this space, and that's really where the accountability comes in. And in fact, it is the first success principle for Jack Canfield is own 100% of your life, and that's where accountability comes in and is key for this process. Thank you everyone again for joining us as we talked about accountability. This is the Elevate Your Best podcast. If you have not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button down below and catch us next week where we're going to be talking about celebration. My name is Michael Danklefs.
I am Bruno Martins from the Cyber Journey, and it is a pleasure to be here with you. Loving being here with you, Michael, having those conversations with the audience. I'm glad.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Hit the subscribe button. Don't forget.